Lord, may your word live in us and bear much fruit to your glory. Amen.
Amen.
I remember when I was in my early 20s, one of the great joys of the summer holidays was when your parents went away on holiday. Open house time, friends come round, do all sorts of things that would never normally be allowed. Happy days. Within my circle of friends, you could end up going on a little tour of open houses during the months of July and August as various parents went away at slightly different times of the holiday season. I remember one time we were around the house of our friends Rob and Lucy. Rob had actually gone away with his parents, but Lucy was still around, so me and my mates piled round there and, let's say, asserted our temporary ownership of the house in a way the parents wouldn't have approved of if they'd have known anything about it. Well, one afternoon we were lounging about at Rob and Lucy's when out of nowhere a car pulled up on the drive. We didn't think it could be Rob and Lucy's parents because they weren't due back for another couple of days. A few seconds later, Rob, who knew exactly the sorts of things we'd be getting up to in his parents' house, rushed in and said, "They decided to come back early, clear everything up." This was in the days before mobile phones, so we literally had a matter of seconds to clear the house up before the parents stepped back in to reclaim the house as their own. Now, I'm not quite sure what happened in the next 10 seconds, but you have never seen a group of people move quite so quickly and with quite such a sense of purpose as we did then. Dusters, air fresheners appeared as if by magic. Things were picked up, swept up, stuffed away, put back, binned, hidden, rearranged. Everyone somehow did their own thing, so that by the time Rob and Lucy's parents stepped over the threshold, their house was completely clean and tidy. It was frankly a miracle, an amazing display of what you can do in a very short space of time if you're in enough of a panic and if you really put your mind to it. Now, the second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ could end up being surprisingly similar to this experience from my youth. It's certainly something that Jesus warns us about in the New Testament reading from today. Jesus' second coming, just like the coming of Rob and Lucy's parents back from holiday, will not happen at a time that anyone will be able to predict. Jesus talks about two men working in a field and two women grinding with a hand mill. No one is in a state of watchfulness or readiness. Rather, they just seem to be going about their normal activities, blissfully unaware, we might imagine, of what was about to befall them. Jesus also compares the second coming to the flood in the Noah story. Nobody, apart from Noah and his family, knew it was on the way. People were eating and drinking, getting married, looking to the future without a care in the world, and then, out of nowhere, bang, the flood came and took them all away. Jesus doesn't tell us exactly what will happen at his second coming, but like the flood, it changes everything forever. Life simply cannot go on in the same way as before. Jesus says of the two working men and the two working women, one will be taken and the other left. This is one of those passages that is used in support of the idea of a rapture, this notion that God will whisk away the righteous to heaven and everyone left on earth will cop his fiery wrath. There does seem to be some kind of division of humanity that will occur, certainly, and the allusion to the flood suggests some kind of judgment too. The idea of the rapture reads far too much into this, however. In any case, who's to say that the righteous are the ones that will be taken away? For a nation whose spiritual identity was shaped by being a people in exile, a people forcibly taken away to another land, it may well be that being taken rather than being left is the actual image of judgment. So we have to be quite careful with this passage because there's an awful lot that Jesus doesn't say. Indeed, if we knew exactly what to expect, maybe we wouldn't have to be quite as watchful. As it is, though, I think the most specific thing Jesus does is not to offer a prediction about the future, but to give us some advice about the present. Be watchful, be prepared, to use the analogy I started off with. Make sure that house you're using is always shipshape and presentable, because you do not know when the parents are coming back from holidays. Behaving disgracefully and then sorting everything out at the last moment so that no one need ever know what you got up to. Well, we kind of got away with it in 1995, but it's not to be recommended. The Son of Man could come at any time, so you need to be on a constant state of high alert. Now, Jesus is very clear that no one knows when the second coming will happen. He explicitly says, the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Despite this, there have been plenty of people who've dared to be very specific on the issue. The very first Christians thought Jesus was coming back imminently. When it turned out he wasn't, people had to adjust their theology accordingly. It's an issue that Luke certainly wrestles with, and that we also get quite a lot about in the second letter of Peter. Sometimes people have chosen pretty random years for when they think the second coming will occur. The 4th century bishop Hilary of Poitiers thought it was going to be in 365 AD. Sometimes people are even more specific, particularly in our own age. I found out about someone called Ronald Vinland, who is described on his own Wikipedia page as a Christian religious crackpot. He first predicted that the second coming would happen on the 29th of September 2011. It didn't. Strike one. He then revised his prophecy and said that the second coming would actually happen on the 27th of May 2012. It didn't. Strike two. He then came up with a third date of the 9th of May 2013. Strike three, you're out. Now, you'd have thought that being wrong 3 times about something Jesus explicitly told us we could never possibly know would put him off making any more predictions. But it seems that Christian religious crackpots are made of harder stuff, and so Vinland went on to make another prediction about the end of the world happening on June the 9th, 2019. Well, we're all still here, and as far as I know, Vinland has since retired from the doomsday prediction business. Often, predictions are attached to years with big round numbers. Loads of people thought the world was going to end in the year 1000. Loads of people thought the world was going to end in 1500. The artist Botticelli, who painted The Birth of Venus, inscribes a prophecy to this effect on one of his paintings called The Mystical Nativity. And I don't know if you remember, but we had our own modern reimagining of the apocalypse in 2000. Do you remember the Y2K bug? The idea that as digital clocks went from 99 to 00, they'd think it was 1900 and become so confused that they'd blow up. Planes, we were told, would fall from the sky at the stroke of midnight. The world as we know it would cease to function and the end times would be here. Well, none of that happened either. I think each age has its own version of the apocalypse. which reveals a lot about the play of human imagination at the time, and nothing whatsoever about God's plans. Today is the first Sunday of Advent, and the passage from Matthew is very much an Advent reading with an Advent theme. Advent, of course, means coming. The discipline of Advent is all about watching and waiting. The thing is, though, there are two comings that we need to be mindful of. There's the first coming, which happened when the Word was made flesh 2,000 years ago, and then there's the second coming, which will happen sometime in the future. In Advent, we need to face both ways. We need to remember the first coming with gratitude and joy, and we need to look forward to the second coming at an unknown date in a state of high alert. Now, with the first coming, because it happened in the past, it's fixed in time forever by the Christian tradition as the 25th of December. Because it's fixed and predictable, we have a bit of leeway in how we decide to get ready for it. We can be super efficient and get it all done early, or we can be in denial about it for most of December and then get it all sorted out at the last minute. But imagine if you didn't know when Christmas was going to be and you only got 24 hours notice. You would have to always have all the food in, all the drink in, all the presents bought and wrapped, and all the decorations ready to go up. Only then could you be sure that you'd be ready for whenever it was that Christmas was sprung on you. Only then would you be good to do Christmas at a moment's notice. Now, thankfully, we don't have to do that for Christmas Day, but we do need to do something similar for the second coming. It could happen at any time, and so we can't leave things to the last minute. We have to be permanently good to go. This is one of the key messages and the key themes of Advent. So how psychologically is that even possible? How can we be permanently watchful without ever resting or allowing ourselves to become distracted? Well, we need to be a people of hope. We need to have one foot in the future and be citizens of God's kingdom as well as citizens of the kingdom of this world. Maybe this is what Paul meant when in Romans he wrote, "Do not let your minds be conformed by the pattern of this world." Maybe it's the pattern of the world to come that we need to be shaped by. And maybe what our evangelism should be revealing is the world to come in our own time as we live out its kingdom values for all to see. One final analogy comes to mind, and that's the restaurant at the end of the universe, which is the second book in Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. The idea is you time travel to a couple of hours before the end of time and matter, enjoy a nice meal, and then get back to your own time before the universe actually ends and takes you with it. When you get back, you are full up and satisfied from a meal you've actually had 170 quintillion years in the future. In the same way, as Christians, we ought to strive to bring into our present lives something of God's promised future. We're witnesses of the age to come, and I think it's by being the future-orientated people of God that we really obey Jesus' command to be watchful. Now, God's promises may come to fruition in 170 quintillion years, or possibly before the end of this service here this morning, or maybe somewhere between the two. One way we demonstrate our faithfulness is being content with not knowing for sure, of trusting that God knows exactly what he is doing, even if we don't. Actually, Jesus says that even the Son doesn't know when the destined end will be. So maybe Jesus himself is our great model here of faithful uncertainty. If we're not sure when the end will come, though, we do know that it will come. And we do know that Jesus will be the central figure. So my Advent challenge for you this December is, how can you prepare for Christmas in a way that not only bears witness to Jesus' first coming, but also to his second one? How can you be a herald of the world to come in the way that you behave towards others and put your values into practice? How might people become aware of that foot that you have in the future and that hope to which you cling? How, in other words, could you observe Advent and not simply just do Christmas? May God's grace help us to live out the spirit of this season by looking forward to the coming season that God himself has promised, the season of his righteousness, where every valley will be exalted and every mountain and hill made low, where the crooked shall be made straight and the rough places plain, where the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this season. Help us to prepare ourselves practically and spiritually for the time ahead. May we be alert to the signs of your coming, and may there be joy in our waiting.